Welcome back, everyone. And continuing from the last episode, Uncle Bob is going to be scouting the nearby areas looking for recruits. However, the recruits in the area are all lacking in the level department. He even spots a war leader and her subordinates, but they're all lacking as well. So he goes to check on a yellow drop coming down from the sky, and that's when he spots this humble stone farmer. But he, first of all, proceeds to the drop, and you won't believe it. The art gods actually sent this cowboy a gun. Seems like they want him to institute law and order on the island after all. So he tests out his new boomstick, and by just running around and shooting this man, it's not the fastest, he finally puts the recruit to sleep. And then he returns to grab the stuff he'll need to feed it. A couple of crops and medjool berries should do the trick. And then he places a fabricator, because he can now. Finally has the resources to. And then he returns. On the way back, he spots Rex, but it's level 30. That aside, he feeds the man and names him Dynamo. And then he gives Dynamo a first-class experience on the RG Express. And he wants to make one more trip to the rafts, and so he takes the Pteranodon because it's faster. But this man has been skipping the gym, so he can't make two moves without stopping. So Uncle Bob returns to base and takes the RG. It's consistent. On the way back, he slaps his wallet really hard and the cryopods fall out. And with these cryopods, he can turn the Rex and Berry Mecha into pocket size. And then this Alpha Raptor wants to throw hands. So Uncle Bob says there can only be one Alpha and leads him back to the negotiation chamber. But as Uncle Bob plans to dismount the RG and engage in one hand-to-hand combat, that man phases out of the negotiation chamber. Yeah, Uncle Bob is convinced that this man knows ninjutsu. But after that show of martial arts, Uncle Bob puts him down and gains 16 levels for the RG. Upon returning to base, Uncle Bob lets free Berry Mecha wants to catch a few Z's, so he feeds him some stimulant to remind him to wake up on time. And then he puts away his precious cryopods. Yeah, he can be dying with these on him. So he takes the stone farmer out to slap some rocks and spend the entire night gathering resources, because as you all know, Bob is a farmer. And the next morning, he returns to scouting locals and taking these beavers' life savings. But yeah, the beaver's not too happy about it. But then he has to also do his duties and ensure that these hooligans are not terrorizing the locals. And this night, Uncle Bob takes the Rex into the river. I want you all to guess in the comments what he's looking for. But it's easier to spot at night if you just hold a torch and walk in the river. The next morning, Uncle Bob goes back out to see what he can find, and while scouting birds up on the mountain, he finds this level 145. That's a beauty. It's 50 levels higher than his current RG, so he proceeds to lead that man over to base. And when he's close enough, Uncle Bob loses aggro and makes a trap. And then you know the drill by now. He invites him over. And this time he actually executes the trap properly, and that man's trapped. He's not too happy about it, but after a couple dozen trank arrows, he tries to leave and realizes that he can't, so he just stays there and takes some more trank arrows. Eventually, he falls asleep. And now Uncle Bob is going to show you guys something. We're going to be taming an otter. That's what the Rex was looking for that night. So now that we can actually see what we're doing. You're going to need to kill a saber-toothed salmon and then harvest its body with a sickle, so you can get raw prime fish meat, which you'll have to put in the last slot of your inventory, and then drag another dead saber-toothed salmon all the way to the otter. I don't know if this is intended, but yeah, that's the only way to tame an otter. So he returns to the RG and feeds it, and Air Fox 2 is born. And then he takes Air Fox 2 out for a spin because it's way stronger than his current bird. Along the way, he stops by at Hidden Lake to find nothing, so he heads over to Carnivore Island, a place with a reputation for annihilating average bobs. But Uncle Bob finds nothing of interest here as well, so he goes over to the snow domain, and yeah, finds nothing here as well. It's barren, except for the penguins, so he clubs them for their polymer. And on his way back to base, Uncle Bob spots some tax evaders. And then he does what the local law enforcement should do and collects the taxes. And then he makes it out of there before the communists come for him. But this time he's loaded with all the resources he needs at base to start his industrial revolution. He places a fridge, an industrial grill, cryo fridge, chemistry bench, industrial forge, and some AC. And now his base is not the best, but it's looking good. And so he returns to scouting for recruits. But as usual, their levels are just nothing to write home about. A level 20 here, a level 35 there. It's like all the high levels just took a paid vacation. Uncle Bob is so down at this point that he tries to bowl a pteranodon and misses twice. Yeah, don't say that back home. And so Uncle Bob tries to cheer himself up by waiting for a purple drop.
A few moments later.
But when it comes down, it meshes into the rock. Yeah, Uncle Bob has been trolled repeatedly all day. But the next day, he heads off to the redwoods and finds something of interest, so he makes a trap for it. But when he goes to invite that man over, he's a lot faster than Uncle Bob and just bites a hole in his back. But the RG's not too happy about that, and then it goes to give it a piece of his mind. And in a few seconds, the RG has decimated it. Well, so much for trapping that. So Uncle Bob heads back off to base and finds some more pathetic locals. But finally, he finds something worth leading to the negotiation chamber. And when that man's there, another local has moved in, a degenerate. So Uncle Bob spots his level 5 and immediately sends him back to the lobby. But back to this lady in the trap, And this lady is on a strict bug diet, and she's going to be helping us with that giant spider we mentioned. So Uncle Bob names her with her purpose. And as evening arrives, Uncle Bob spots another thing he wants to tame, a bear. These guys are great for gathering honey. And he places some bear traps, obviously. But when he shoots at the bear just beelines for the RG. I don't know why, they must have personal beef. So Uncle Bob has to whistle the RG not to kill the bear. And then he punches him to remind him not to kill the recruits. But with the bear aggroed onto the RG, Uncle Bob leads him straight into the trap. And while that man is gnawing at the bear trap, Uncle Bob places some more. A few moments later, he has a bug eater trapped as well. But when he returns to check on his beer, a band of hooligans beat him to the trap and decimate the beer in seconds. Yeah, so he teaches them a thing or two about etiquette. And then he returns to feed the sleeping bug eater. And when it wakes up, he returns to bathe. But on his way back, he spots something else he'd like to tame. It's this clawed chicken. You see, this guy is the best option to fight the dragon. And so Uncle Bob has to tame him. But he leads him to the negotiation chamber as usual and sees how happy that man is to be there. And then he teaches his Megatheriums the art of love and comes back to put that beaked chicken to sleep. Eventually it's knocked out and Uncle Bob gives it a load of Z-Quells to keep it asleep because it wakes up really fast. And that's when he spots that tech parasol, giving him nostalgia from his day one on the beach. And so he has to bolo it and put it to sleep. And then he splits his veggies among the Therizinosaur and the parasol. And eventually the parasol is named Jerry and the Therizinosaur is named Pex. He leads his two friends back into base. If you've watched up to this point, I want to remind you to please subscribe.